Welcome back to Shannons Club TV, the show for all motoring enthusiasts to indulge their passion for Australian road and race cars. In today's episode, we'll visit a proud Ford enthusiast's garage for a road trip in one of his prized Falcons.
And if you're in the market, we'll get some valuable tips from the Shannons auctions team. So let's kick things off with the Aussie Fords, which suffered from what appeared to be corporate complacency, the EF and EL Falcons.
It's a measure of how rapid automotive development was in the years from 1988 to 1998 that the final expression of the EA Falcon theme, the EL, seemed so dated by 1997. The purity of the EA's design had been compromised by some clunky facelifts, and the 1997 VT Commodore just seemed so new by comparison. Although Ford Australia had been playing engineering catch-up throughout that decade, the EF and EL still lacked independent rear suspension. The driving position still placed most drivers too high in the car with the wheel too low, but hold the front page, the 1994 EF Falcon did score at last a proper floor-mounted handbrake. The EF Falcon represented a case of one step forward and one, sometimes literally, sideways. It drove like a car that had been engineered by a committee, and that was because it was. NVH was prioritised over handling, and early EF suffered from roll oversteer. Hasty suspension revisions followed for the EF Series 2. Mark, the EF was a compromised, even really a flawed road car.
Yeah, sure was.
How did they transform it into a V8 supercar?
Well, the beauty of it was fairly painless because all they had to do under the V8 supercar rules was take the existing EB Falcons and just cosmetically upgrade the front and rear with the EF and later EL bodywork, and of course the aerodynamic revisions that came with that. Under the skin, it was still the same 550 to 600 brake horsepower, 5-litre V8, the 6-speed Hollinger gearbox, and the multi-link live rear axle. And I must say the EF and the EL were both successful race cars, which I'll cover a bit later on.
The EF's 4-litre 6 developed 157 kilowatts up 9 and 164 in XR6 tune. The 5-litre V8 was optional across the range. Oddly, the XR8 was no quicker than the XR6. With their sport suspension, the XRs were far superior to other Falcons. Engineering guru John Mole made further significant suspension changes for the EL, incorporating XR6 rear-end geometry and tweaks to the front end and steering. John Mole had given Ford Australia's performance partner Tickford a great basis for the 30th anniversary EL GT Falcon. Although the styling was bizarre, the EL GT was a more impressive effort than the 25th anniversary EB, which failed to live up to its promised 200 kilowatts of power. So really, the EL GT can be seen as an XR8 taken to the max. As for the XR8, shortly after the debut of the VT Commodore, it gained 15 extra kilowatts and standard 16-inch wheels. Mark, did anyone at Ford Australia expect to see the EF and EL XRs racing, or the EL GT for that matter?
No, they were very much built with a road car focus because Ford's focus in those days in racing was squarely on V8 supercars. The transition to the latest EF Falcon V8 supercar in 1995 prompted Ford Australia to expand its support beyond the Dick Johnson and Glenn Seaton two-car teams, with Tony Longhurst in a Castrol-backed EF and Mark Larkham's radical Mitre 10 version joining the Blue Oval Brigade. The EF proved to be a fast and effective race car, with John Bowe securing his first Australian Touring Car Championship after a gripping season-long battle with Seaton. Bowe and Johnson also won the Sandown 500, but intense rivalry between Ford's top teams boiled over at Bathurst and virtually handed victory to Holden. The Bowe-Johnson EF crashed out after tangling with Seaton in a ferocious battle for the lead, before race leader Seaton also dropped out with a devastating engine failure less than 10 laps from his first long-awaited win. The cause? A broken valve spring. John, who could forget that moment with Seaton stuck beside the road, parked on the road, talking to the commentators less than 10 laps from the finish? It was absolutely devastating.
Well, he was always pretty gracious. in defeat and victory, Glenn Seaton. Quite quietly spoken, not at all your kind of paradigm of the aggressive race driver in personality.
Yeah, but it was incredible. I mean, you know, that year he was turning 30. It was 30 years since his dad had won the race. He was driving car number 30. It seemed like all the stars had aligned, and all of a sudden this crippling failure at the end. I'll never forget that. It was amazing.
He was perhaps, you know, if Sterling Moss was the best driver never to win a Formula One World Championship, you'd have to say Glenn Seaton was probably the least successful of the top rank of touring car drivers overall.
He was the driver I thought would win Bathurst, and he never won one, which was a cruel shame.
Yeah.
Holden returned fire in 1996 as young gun Craig Lowndes led a Holden racing team clean sweep of the Touring Car Championship, and, with Kiwi Greg Murphy, the Sandown and Bathurst double in a VR Commodore. In response, Ford teams updated to the latest EL Falcon in 1997, which again was largely cosmetic as the mechanical package was unchanged. The Australian Touring Car Championship was another intense Ford versus Holden battle, and the new EL proved to be another winner, with Glenn Seaton in his Ford credit-backed EL securing his second title at the final round. The EL's final season in 1998 saw aerodynamic upgrades to improve downforce as it faced Holden's new VT Commodore. Lowndes won his second Touring Car Championship for Holden, but Ford hit back at Bathurst with a gritty win by Stone Brothers Racing and its young guns Jason Bright and Stephen Richards. Ford could not have asked for a better curtain call for the EL Falcon, which left centre stage as a Bathurst winner. Remember to join the Shannons Club, where you can connect with other enthusiasts around the country.
My name's Jason, and this is my 97 EL 30th anniversary Falcon GT. My brother bought the car and left it sat in his shed for a couple of years and did nothing with it, and then decided to get rid of it. So I decided I'd buy it off him. I've had it for probably about 5 years. Had to do a little bit of work on it to bring it back up to original specs. It's got the standard EL GT 200 kilowatt motorsport engine, automatic. No, it wasn't bad. It needed a couple of things changed. Somebody had changed the colour of the wheels, the engine cover and little bits and pieces had been changed, and front end bushes and rear end bushes needed replacing, and because they're all specific to EL GT, they're sort of hard to come by and track down, sort of brought back to make it period correct, so to speak. The car's very pleasurable to drive. It's not a race car by any means. A very refined sort of luxury car with a little bit more power than a standard car of the era. It's different, it's bold, it's a bit of an out there sort of in your face styling. It goes nice and it drives nice. Back in the Glenn Seaton days, I think Glenn Seaton was racing the ELs. John Bowe had a lot to do with the technical setup of the car, as in getting the suspension and all the bits to work right with the car. All my cars are insured with Shannons. I think I've got 8 cars insured with Shannon. I haven't had any dramas with them. The future for this car is just to enjoy it a little bit, do a little bit of driving in it, not too much. It just sits in the collection with the others, and I'll add a couple more to the collection and it'll sit in there with them.
Shannon's National Auctions Manager Chris Borobin joins us with some market news on the EF and EL Falcon.
Hi John.
Welcome back. The EF and EL Falcon, you know, the last of that 5th generation Falcon, or the E-Series architecture, as we spoke about. Sort of GLI, Futura, sort of forgettable models. I guess the ones you're really focusing on collectability-wise are the Tickford models, XR6, XR8, and of course the EL GT.
Yeah, I think that's that's probably the pick. The XR8 and the GTs are probably the 2 biggest picks out of that range. Yeah.
And the EL GT, where's that sitting on the pecking order now in terms of GTs?
Well, for example, how does it compare with the EB?
Yeah.
Yeah, Look, I think it's probably still above the EBGT in desirability. It's still holding its value probably, higher. We're looking at a higher value on the EL GT.
So why do you think that is? Because certainly in terms of its appearance, it was far more polarising in its appearance than the EB was. But why do you think it's more collectible now?
Perhaps that's the reason, because it's so obviously a different car.
Yeah, it is a different car, and it probably was a bit more advanced than obviously the EB GT. Look, I think its styling appealed to a lot of people, and that's probably why it's had its.
It probably looked that way because Ford very cleverly worked out that the people who wanted to buy the car would like it to look that way, and it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks.
And there's also that nostalgia effect, like when the Walkinshaw Group A Commodore came out, everyone just reeled in horror, but now it actually looks pretty good after a time. So.
And yet, Chris, I can't help but feeling, and I'd really like your opinion on this, I can't help but feeling that people who bought one brand new, an EL GT, and sold it away in the garage, they'd be disappointed with how it hasn't really perhaps taken off as much as they thought.
Yeah, and I think the value's probably held for a bit, and then they came back, and I think we've probably seen a small climb back in the value, and I think, we are seeing a lot of these 90s cars sort of coming into their own.
Longer term, I think you'd be saying that an EL GT would be a pretty good thing to have in your shed.
I think if a car's got, good service history, fairly low mileage, was a nicely optioned car with the right colour scheme, it's going to hold its value quite well.
And of course, those Tickford models, they're really interesting. XR6, XR8 in sedan.
XR6 wagon.
XR6 wagon in the EF. Now that was a little experiment done by Tickford because apparently there was demand there for an XR6 wagon, but it really didn't sell that well. They dropped it for the EL. So
But they sold the utes. They sold lots and lots of XR6 and XR8 utes, didn't they?
But that XR6 wagon, that would be quite a rare thing to have now, wouldn't it? I only remember seeing one.
Yeah, it's probably a point of interest, that one, isn't it? I think, Australians have always loved the wagon, for the practicality of it. So to have a performance wagon is something different and interesting.
Imagine if you found something really oddball, like a GLI with the V8 option.
5-litre engine,
a Fairmont V8, even a Fairlane or an LTD V8. I mean, those sort of cars, that'd be something to put away, I reckon.
And with the Fairmont gears, it was very popular to specify them with a body kit. I think a Fairmont gear like that with the V8 engine
body kit,
and the factory body kit would be a pretty desirable car in a few years' time.
Well, look, I think what we don't know is what is the survival rate on these cars, and I would think that's fairly low. So to try and find a car low kilometres, well maintained, it's probably one to grab if we can find the right specifications.
If you found that needle in the haystack,
that's right.
You'd take it out and keep it.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks for joining us today, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, mate.
And remember, you'll find all the latest market updates on the Shannons Club website. If you'd like a memorable race image of the EF and EL Falcons, check out the huge archive at autopix.com.au.
John, I know they fixed that roll oversteer problem in the EF with the EL, but it just staggered me. I drove several EF rental cars and things like that. I can remember driving that car, the back end was so nervous. You felt like any time, even at low speed, that you were going to fire off into the
It was frightening. I remember at the launch of the thing, noticing straight away there was something wrong with it and confronting the Ford people about it, and of course they denied it. They must have known they had a problem with it.
Oh, yeah, because they fixed it with the EL.
And you'd see them swapped ends on wet roads quite often.
I just found that amazing though at the time, thinking of a very mature company like Ford Australia, releasing a car like that was clearly dangerous to drive, particularly on wet roads.
Absolutely right. It was the car designed by a committee. Really, yeah. We hope you've enjoyed reflecting on the EF and EL Falcons, which in a sense were cars that came at the end of an era of Ford Australia dominance. And we look forward to your company next time on Shannons Club TV.